For years, the relationship between Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and the British royal family has remained one of the most talked-about stories in the world. What began as a modern royal love story quickly transformed into a global debate about tradition, independence, loyalty, and the future of the monarchy. But now, a new wave of speculation has captured public attention. Reports and rumors have suggested that King Charles and Prince William could be considering stronger measures regarding the Sussexes' connection to royal life. The idea of titles being removed, royal privileges being reduced, and the final separation between the Sussex family and the institution has created intense discussion among royal watchers around the world. But what would such a decision really mean? Could the monarchy ever completely distance itself from Harry and Meghan? And what emotional price would come with a choice that involves not only duty, but also family? Behind the public appearances, official statements, and endless media coverage lies a much more complicated story. One involving a father, two brothers, and a historic institution trying to balance personal emotions with the responsibilities of the crown. Imagine a quiet moment inside one of the royal residences. Away from cameras, reporters, and public attention, important conversations are taking place. The atmosphere is serious. The decisions being discussed are not simply about titles or ceremonies. They are about the image of the monarchy, the expectations placed upon its members, and the future direction of the royal family. For King Charles, any decision involving his youngest son would carry a deeply personal weight. Before becoming monarch, Charles spent decades preparing for the role of king. He understood that the crown requires difficult choices, even when those choices involve people he loves. Harry is not just a prince in the eyes of Charles. He is his son. The child who grew up in palace corridors, who shared family celebrations, and who once stood beside William as part of the next generation of the royal family. That history makes the conflict far more complicated than a simple disagreement over royal responsibilities. According to many royal commentators, the central issue has always been the question of whether someone can maintain the benefits and recognition connected to royal status while also building a completely independent public life away from the institution. The monarchy has always been built around service, tradition, and public duty. Supporters of a stricter approach argue that royal titles carry responsibilities and should not be separated from those obligations. Critics, however, believe that removing titles or creating further distance would only deepen family divisions and create more public controversy. The debate surrounding Harry and Meghan has never been only about official roles. It has also been about trust. Since stepping away from senior royal duties, the Sussexes have shared their experiences publicly through interviews, documentaries, and personal projects. Their supporters argue that they were telling their own story after years of feeling misunderstood. Their critics argue that private family matters should have remained private. This difference in perspective created a divide that became increasingly difficult to repair. Many observers believe one of the biggest challenges for King Charles has been finding a balance between being a father and being the head of the monarchy. A father may want reconciliation. A king must consider the stability and reputation of the institution. Those two responsibilities do not always point in the same direction. Prince William faces a similar challenge. As the future king, his focus has always been on protecting the long-term future of the monarchy. Many royal analysts believe William sees the institution through a different lens, one shaped by preparation, duty, and the responsibility of eventually becoming sovereign. For William, the question is not simply about personal disagreements. It is about how the monarchy operates in a changing world and how future generations will view the role of the royal family. The possibility of a permanent separation from royal life has therefore become symbolic of something much larger. It represents a clash between two different visions of what royalty should mean. One vision emphasizes tradition, discipline, and duty. The other emphasizes personal freedom, independence, and creating a new identity outside traditional expectations. At the center of this debate is Meghan Markle. Since joining the royal family, Meghan has remained one of the most discussed figures in modern royal history. Supporters describe her as someone who wanted to bring change and create a more modern approach to royal life. Critics argue that her actions challenged traditions that had existed for generations. Regardless of personal opinions, few can deny the impact Meghan and Harry have had on the global conversation surrounding the monarchy. Their decision to step back from royal duties changed the royal family forever. It forced difficult questions about what it means to be a working royal in the modern era. It also raised questions about whether members of the family can separate themselves from royal responsibilities while still maintaining royal recognition. These questions have continued to follow the Sussexes years after their departure. Behind every headline is a human story. For Harry, the conflict represents a struggle between the family he was born into and the life he chose to create. For Charles, it represents the painful reality of leading an institution while dealing with personal family challenges. And for William, it represents the burden of preparing for a future where every decision will be judged through the lens of history. The possibility of titles being removed has generated strong reactions because royal titles are not simply words. They represent identity, heritage, and connection to a centuries-old institution. For Harry and Meghan, losing that connection would represent a dramatic change in how they are viewed around the world. For the monarchy, supporters argue it would create a clearer boundary between official royal duties and private life. But would such a move truly end the Sussex story? History suggests that royal controversies rarely disappear overnight. Every decision creates new conversations, new questions, and new consequences. The relationship between Harry and his family has already experienced years of tension. Yet beneath the public disagreements, there remains a shared history that cannot easily be erased. A childhood spent together. A mother they both lost. Memories that existed long before the cameras and headlines. As speculation continues, the biggest question remains unanswered. Is this truly the end of the Sussex connection to royal life, or is there still a possibility of rebuilding trust in the future? The answer may depend not only on official decisions, but also on whether a family divided by duty can eventually find a way back to understanding. Because behind the titles, behind the palaces, and behind the public image, this remains a story about family, loyalty, and the difficult choices that come when personal emotions collide with a historic responsibility. And the world continues to watch as the next chapter of the royal saga unfolds. As the debate surrounding Harry and Meghan continued, the question facing the royal family became more complicated than ever. It was no longer only about titles, appearances, or official responsibilities. It was about whether the relationship between the Sussexes and the monarchy could survive after years of disagreements, public statements, and growing distance. For King Charles, every possible decision carried consequences. A move to create a clearer separation from royal life could be viewed by some as protecting the institution. But others would see it as a painful step that pushed a family already divided even further apart. Inside royal circles, the discussion was believed to focus on one central issue: the future role of Harry and Meghan in relation to the crown. Could they remain connected to the royal family while continuing an independent life away from official duties? Or would a complete separation create a clearer path forward for everyone involved? These questions became increasingly difficult because the Sussexes remained globally recognized figures. Even after stepping away from their working royal roles, their actions continued to attract enormous attention. Every interview, every public appearance, and every business decision was analyzed through the lens of their former royal identity. Supporters of a stricter approach argued that the monarchy needed firm boundaries. They believed royal titles and connections should represent service rather than personal branding. They pointed to the importance of protecting the meaning behind royal traditions and ensuring that future generations understood the difference between being a member of the family and representing the institution. However, those who opposed such measures argued that removing titles or creating more distance would not solve the deeper issues. They believed the real challenge was rebuilding trust and finding a way for family relationships to exist despite disagreements. The situation became even more emotional because of the history between the brothers. For years, Prince William and Prince Harry had been viewed as a close pair, two brothers who experienced both privilege and extraordinary personal loss together. The death of their mother, Princess Diana, created a bond that shaped both of their lives. They grew up knowing that their every action would be watched by the public, and they carried the unique pressures that came with being royal children. But as adults, their paths began to move in different directions. William embraced the traditional role expected of a future monarch. Harry chose a different path, seeking greater independence and a life away from the constant demands of royal duty. Neither decision was simple. For William, protecting the future of the monarchy became a responsibility he could not ignore. For Harry, creating a life outside the institution represented a chance to find personal freedom and control over his own story. The conflict between these two perspectives became one of the defining challenges of the modern royal family. If reports of a permanent separation from royal life were ever to become reality, the impact would extend far beyond official documents. The public reaction would likely be intense. Some would praise the decision as a necessary step to protect royal traditions. Others would describe it as a heartbreaking moment in a family already facing years of tension. The world has always been fascinated by the contrast between the image of royalty and the reality of being human. Behind the formal ceremonies and historic titles are people dealing with difficult emotions, disagreements, and personal struggles. This is why the story of Harry and Meghan continues to capture attention. It represents a much larger conversation about family, duty, independence, and the expectations placed upon those born into positions of extraordinary public responsibility. For Meghan, the loss of any royal connection would represent a dramatic change from the future many once imagined when she married Prince Harry. When she entered the royal family, millions watched closely, wondering how a new generation of royalty would evolve. Her supporters believed she represented change and a more modern approach. Her critics believed royal traditions required greater adaptation and respect. Years later, those debates remain deeply divided. For Harry, the challenge has been even more personal. His relationship with his family has become connected to larger questions about identity and belonging. Although he stepped away from royal duties, he remains connected to the history and legacy of the institution he was born into. That connection cannot simply disappear. A title can change. A role can change. Public perception can change. But family history remains. The possibility of reconciliation has therefore remained a subject of constant speculation. Could time heal the divisions? Could private conversations rebuild trust? Or have too many painful moments created a distance that may never fully disappear? Only time will reveal the answer. What is certain is that the Sussex story has changed the monarchy in ways few could have predicted. It has forced the institution to examine how it handles tradition in a modern world. It has raised questions about privacy, public duty, and the responsibilities that come with royal status. The next generation of royals will inherit these lessons. Prince William and Princess Catherine will eventually lead a monarchy shaped by the decisions made today. Every choice regarding Harry and Meghan will become part of the history they inherit. For King Charles, the situation represents one of the most difficult challenges of his reign. A monarch is expected to protect the crown, but a father naturally wants to protect his family. Balancing those two roles may be one of the hardest responsibilities he has ever faced. As the world continues to follow every development, one thing remains clear. The story of Harry and Meghan is not simply about titles. It is about a family navigating change under the brightest spotlight imaginable. Whether the future brings further distance or eventual reconciliation, the decisions made during this period will be remembered as a defining chapter in royal history. The palace walls have witnessed countless moments of triumph, controversy, and transformation. But few stories have created as much debate as the journey of the Sussexes. A story that began with hope and celebration became a story about choices, consequences, and the difficult balance between personal happiness and public duty. And as the next chapter unfolds, the world will continue watching, waiting to see whether the divide between the Sussexes and the monarchy becomes permanent, or whether a bridge can one day be rebuilt.